Hello, lovelies. I am here to talk to you today about this deck, the Golden Tarot by Cat Black, which was first released in 2003. And I've actually featured this specific edition of this deck before on this channel. I'll link the video that I'm talking about below. This is, I believe, the very first printing of this deck, which I did not get in 2003. I got it in maybe 2016. It's the matte edition of this deck. This deck was then re-released in a glossy edition, which is how I discovered it in 2015, years after it came out. And the reason this deck has a very special place in my heart is because it is the deck that I was playing with when I first came up with the idea for Mindful Tarot. So, you know, it's not a deck that I work with a lot these days, but it was a deck which back in 2015, 2016 was in some strange way tied to my kind of decision to pull together my mindfulness practice and my love of tarot into this thing I call Mindful Tarot. So I don't know. Oh, look at that death card. I don't know what it is about my relationship to this deck. I love this devil. Certainly I have a link to medieval culture. These images really speak to me. Holy cow. But, you know, I never quite got on with the glossy edition of this deck, so it wasn't until I found a matte version that it really started to sing to me. The Golden Tarot. Now, why am I talking about it today? Well, because US Games has just come out with a linen edition of this deck. They listen to us. Or for those of us who love linen cardstock, they listen to us. If you're not on the linen bandwagon, you know, this may not be so thrilling. But I had to get a copy of it, and I had to see how the cardstock changes things, if it changes things, and to see if by having a version of this in linen, I will now kind of revive my love of this deck and maybe get a clearer sense of why it was the deck that kind of helped me come up with the idea for Mindful Tarot. All right, so let's do a little companion comparison walkthrough. I don't expect the images to be different at all. I'm curious about whether the copyright is on the cards in the same way. One thing I'll point out is the boxes are like identical. They're the same size. They feel the same. They really are the same. This one you can tell is a little bit worn out. I mean, I've had it for a while and I got it secondhand, so production feels exactly the same. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty. And I'm not going to talk about the book. I'm going to assume the book, content-wise, hasn't changed. It certainly looks the same. It's the same. Is it the same exact thickness? It looks like it might be yeah, I think it's the same quality. You know, the signatures are glued in. It's not exactly a very easy to use little booklet because you can't really you don't want to crack that spine. But I'm not going to talk about this. The meanings actually for the Golden Tarot, you can find them. There's a website which has them online and has the images. So it's a really good, if you want to study the tarot through this deck, the images and the meanings for it online are really nice. So I'll put a link to that. Okay, let's talk about the cards themselves. Okay, so all I've done is take the plastic off. So the gilding, of course, on my new edition is much brighter. Oops, sorry for knocking that. The cardstock. So you can see the linen, but it's not a very pronounced linen. In fact, it feels more like a matte, come to think of it. It feels different than this matte edition. This one is a little slippier. This one has a little more grab to it. But I would say this is not a pronounced linen cardstock. That's interesting. I'm a little disappointed. Yeah, same copyright. So what are they doing here? Why do they call this linen? Let's just really zoom in. Okay, you can see it's a subtle, subtle linen. It is not the linen of, for a contrast. So this is Zara Kitten Shop's Scrumptious Playful Heart Tarot, which was printed by Expert Playing Cards, that Taiwanese company. And this is kind of, I think, you know, this is the linen cardstock that I think is the premier. By the way, I'm sorry about my cuticles. I have horrible cuticles. It's embarrassing for a YouTuber, but there you go. You can see in this extreme close-up, you can see how much more nubbified the Expert Playing Cardstock's linen is. It's a more pronounced texture. My skin feels it a little bit more. Let's see. Snap-wise. Whoops. Oh, these are snappy. We'll have to do a riffle shuffle and see what it feels like. I am slightly disappointed, but not completely. So let's move on. I will say that it might be that this cardstock is a smidge less, let's back out again, a smidge less thick in the linen than in the old matte. Now, I don't have the most recent edition of this deck, which is before the new one, which is a glossy cardstock, so I can't compare that. I got that out of my collection years ago. But you'll see it's like, you know, the difference of 4 cards thicker when you stack them up this way. Now, let's see if we can, I don't know if you can kind of see the difference in thickness. The matte of the 2003 edition is nice. It's not it's not like a great matte deck though. It's sort of, it feels a little cardboardy. So it's not an incredible matte deck. Let's go through the images. And I understand that this is probably, this is like such a level of detail. Is there anyone else in the universe who cares about this as much as I do? I will say that you just look at them under naked eye. Yeah. I will say that the colors and the clarity of the printing is a little bit improved maybe in this new edition. Certainly there's a kind of edge flaw that at least my 2003 edition had. Yeah. So the images are going to be exactly the same, I think. But let's just go through the deck, because when was the last time you took a peek at the Golden Tarot and admired Cat Black's collage style, which sometimes can be a little clunky, but there's a charm to it nonetheless. And then just the way she leans into the medieval iconography, this chariot. I mean, this is why the triumph cards, the trump cards are triumph cards, triomphe there. This is tied to the medieval tradition, the pageantry tradition, at least the iconography of pageant that we see in texts like Petrarch's poetry sequence, the Triomphe. There we have a figure. For Petrarch, that would have been, you know, the figure of chastity. Strength. Beautiful. I love the raven on the horse there. I love the animals in this deck. And all of the angels, right? So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. The palette is so sweet and delicious. This star card and this moon card. Yeah, you know, as I handle these, I really don't feel a significant difference between the matte and the linen. It just doesn't quite read like a linen deck, you know? It's interesting. Again, I want to like zoom in. It just, yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if they didn't want to just say they were going back to matte. I don't, okay. Oh, I'm being visited by the hounds of hell. My dogs were just out on a hike. They just came back. They needed to have their after hike biscuit, of course, and I needed to reorder my brand new deck into the drop 'em order that I put cards in, coins to wands to cups to swords. Okay, so you know this thing that Cat Black does with the angels as the ace of each suit. I don't know. Some of the collage is a little clunky, but again, she's just such a charming deck. Just so sweet. Very, very friendly for anyone who is familiar with reading cards in the RWS and the Waite-Smith lineage, because of course, what she does with her collage is to give us the elements of that lineage. Yeah, it doesn't feel linen. So it's not highly laminated, which is nice if you don't like laminated, but it's not highly textured either. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a kind of solid B for cardstock. You know, it's not bad. It's not great. It gets back to what the matte version of this deck offers, which is a more easily shuffleable version, but it doesn't do, at least as I'm looking at it, it doesn't do what linen can do. It doesn't give us, let me get another example of a great linen deck. Looking for my Terra Volatile or Lonely Dreamer. You know, here with the Lonely Dreamer, where you just have a slightly grabby texture. And again, a much more pronounced linen finish. It's interesting. Okay. All right. But let's look at the images, shall we? Again, I love the little animals. I love the portraiture. You know what Cat Black also does with the Touchstone Tarot, a later version of a collage deck featuring later images from the 16th century instead of from like the High Middle Ages. Oh, this is a beautiful Ace of Wands. My all-time favorite medieval tarot deck is probably the Tarot de Marseille Waite, Emmanuel Iger's deck, which is with drawings by Alice Laverty, which is inspired by medieval manuscripts, but has that sweetness that we also see in the figures here. That's a wonderful deck. But there's so many things to love here. The scroll, the bird in flight, the kind of lilt and leaning of the figures. There's a kind of tenderness in these medieval portraits, the delicacy of sort of wrist and neck, and you know what I'm like, the postural delicacy. You know, there's nothing like a medieval ankle. You know what I mean? Well, I mean, if there is something like as good as a medieval ankle, it might be a medieval rabbit. This is gorgeous. This Queen of Wands. I like the queens a lot in this. I think the queens, the angel aces, and the animals, they're my favorite parts of this deck. Yeah, so nothing, the images have not been retouched. You know, I was thinking that they might, the colors might have been kind of enhanced. The borders, the gold seem a little bit brighter in the new edition, but on this edge, the way the edge is worn here, which I don't think is a matter of this deck being worn, but I think is a printing issue on the earlier version. Whoops, what happened here? But essentially, this is just reprinting of the deck with the linen-ish finish. I love that version of the Page of Cups. And one of my all-time favorite cards in tarot, the Knight of Cups here. I love the water. I love the angel with the scroll in the far distance. Another fabulous queen. That ocean. And that is a brilliant Ace of Swords. Not a very conflictual feeling Five of Swords, but I do love that figure in the foreground. Others are fleeing or moving on, or perhaps just casting their nets as we move away. The expression on the Seven of Swords. An icy Eight of Swords. Black dog of melancholy besetting the Nine of Swords. And tormenting the Ten of Swords. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to do a detailed study of these animals. And the appearance of butterflies. So is her, yeah, her association with air is giving her butterflies in this deck. Okay, so let's do a shuffle of the new deck and a little bit of a deck dialogue. So I'm going to shuffle a few times on camera and then give a really good shuffle. Maybe I won't subject you to that off camera. Okay. So how does this deck... Oops. Yeah, that is a nice ripple. It's a little stiff, which I think over time will wear. Yeah. Okay. So it shuffles pretty well. It's a little sharp in my hands. The edges are a little sharp. I know some people love gilding. I am so not a fan of gilding. I like edge decks. I mean, it's a nice quality, but gilding, I don't really care for the bling. Sometimes I think it kind of actually cheapens the deck. This is a very yellow edging. And I do think it makes decks a little bit harder on the hands. So let's contrast shuffling this version with shuffling the older version. And you'll see this gold is more muted, and maybe this one will wear into a more muted gold. Yeah. You know, although this is a nice matte, this is not a good shuffle, right? Which the new linen-ish finish, it's a pretty good shuffle. Okay, it's growing on me, this cardstock. It does do a nice riffle. It bridges well. It snaps back together. It does feel sharp on the hands if I compare it to, you know, what is, I think, the best of the best in terms of linen. Again, this is Melissa Weatherspoon's Lonely Dreamer Tarot. This is the first edition. You know, this is much smoother feeling. The cardstock is a little bit grippier. The riffle is a little bit more satisfying. But, you know, this is it's a solid cardstock and a big improvement over the glossy. Okay. Golden Tarot. Let's do a little deck dialogue here. What do you have? What do you have to show me? What do you want to teach me? Or what do you want to bring forward today? Let's leave it at that. And I'm not going to do reversals. 5 of Swords. I was pulling this card in another deck the other day. So you're bringing something conflictual here. You're bringing this sense of tension. I'm not sure I understand. So is the conflict you're bringing forward something that's reflecting my relationship to you, or are you bringing something forward? Are you able to point to the conflictual in life? Help me understand this conflict. Oh, yeah. Okay, so you're kind of an intellectual deck, aren't you? You're kind of pointing me toward the sharpness in life. That's super interesting because I don't think of this as a sharp deck. Are you wanting to show me how my mind can cut through things? Are you a deck that is inviting a kind of decisiveness or process of discernment? Are you here to help me with discernment, with working through my own conflicts, perhaps? Is that what you're saying? Oh, okay. Helping me kind of get to the heart of passion, of my passion, of what drives me, to the energy, my force, or the life force in others. Helping to cut through things. Is that what you're saying? Helping to release. Yeah. Helping to bring into fruition. Helping to tilt toward life. Maybe helping to work from this place of conflict. Helping to get from inner conflict. And I somehow associate the dogs in this deck with nightmares, partly because of that dog in the 9 of Swords. Oops, sorry about that. That black dog. Are trying to help folks get from the land of kind of inner conflict toward a place of unfolding. Is that? Helping people work with dissatisfaction, with dream. I'm struck by this angel in the 4 of Cups, with the way that we're held off and sort of contemplatively held off by what we fantasize, what we think we need, helping us move from that. Again, I'm thinking of this Empress and this Queen of Wands, helping us take a stand. I'm trying to understand you as helper. And perhaps that's not quite accurate. Maybe you're trying to speak to us of what we're carrying in our heart and our thoughts, and how to use that to take a stand in life. Am I getting closer here? And I have a feeling I need to pick the bottom card, which is this, the Ace of Swords. Yes, I'm getting closer. And the top card, which is the Moon. Okay. So yes, there's something about the world of imagination and deep archetype, I think. Partly because this is a medieval inspired deck. So this deep, deep imagery helping us kind of cut through, releasing from that, drawing the stuff which might be maybe the stuff of our dreams and our psyche that is creating conflict or stress or keeping us stuck, bringing that forward. So I am seeing this deck, it's a complex deck. I'm seeing this deck as inviting a kind of work that is both Ace of Swords and the Moon, both kind of intellectual and cutting, but because of perhaps all the conflicts that might be unconscious in us, this deck helping us release forward from that, this image of the butterfly, release forward from what is maybe inward, like the angel vision in the Four of Cups. It keeps us stuck. We're not moving forward. It keeps us in conflict. But how do we cut through that, bringing forth the unconscious materials, bringing forth the unconscious conflicts, and allowing these two incredible female archetypes, Queen of Wands and the Empress, to burst forth with all of their energy. Okay, that is a kind of abstract deck dialogue, but it's intriguing to me, this blend of swordsiness and fantasy and sort of imagination, the world of the moon, the world of the unconscious. It's really interesting to me. It makes me want to play with these cards. So, not the perfect linen cardstock, a linen-ish cardstock, but a really cool deck that this new release has invited me to bring back into heavy rotation. Cat Black's Golden Tarot, newly re-released by US Games. Okay, that's all I got for now. I also, I'm really ridiculous. I also picked up, I never have owned a copy of this deck. It's now been re-released in this linen cardstock as well. So I may have a video about this deck, the influence of angels, talking about angels in general. But that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, thank you for your practice, and pardon my cuticles. It is what it is. One last note. I didn't want to talk too much about the guidebook because, it has, the stuff you'd expect in a guidebook, and you can get it online, and it's not very easy to read from because it has that kind of binding that you just know if you crack the back and try to read it flat, you will start losing pages. But it does have this thing that all such decks should include, which is a very detailed discussion, pages and pages of the sources for each image, each component of the collage, like down to building cracks, sources for the star, right? Women, landscape, dogs. What are these from? Where's the stream from with the mermaid? Where's the crab in the moon, right? And what that can mean is that you can start to read the individual elements if you want to say, oh, where does that dog come from? So the stag, hare, and white hound come from the vision of Saint Eustace, circa 1440. And you could look up that particular image, the vision of Saint Eustace. And you could even start to think about, well, who's Saint Eustace? How is that relevant to the moon? So it becomes a gateway to, if you want, to a deep exploration of archetype, in the same way that if you're invoking an archetype that's carried in the image of a myth, say the figure of Orpheus, all of the stories associated with Orpheus can become part of your understanding of the archetype. Or if you're working with a deck like the Tarot of the Divine, or the Fairy Tale Tarot, where you have fairy tales as the basis of each card, you can start diving into the storyline as a way of deepening your understanding of the archetype that's brought forth in the image. So that's super cool. Collage artists, if you could do that all the time, that would be freaking awesome. Also, just by acknowledging your sources, that's really great, and you contribute to a world that understands that content and information comes from somewhere, and knowing that somewhere is part of how we empower ourselves. Okay, that's all I got. Again, Thank you for watching. Take good care.